Located approximately 40 miles from the bustling capital of Seoul, South Korea, lies Camp Humphreys. Officially known as the United States Army Garrison Humphreys, this base holds the busiest US Army airfield in Asia. It has nearly 700 buildings and facilities and is full of tactical units, combat brigades, and an overall cost of $11 billion. On the ground, you'll find daycares and school systems, hospitals, shopping centers, and playgrounds. It can almost be mistaken for an American suburb. According to the US Army, this is their greatest power projection platform in the region and the largest US overseas military base. Camp Humphreys is not rare, but one of the many collaborative efforts on the part of both governments. In fact, America has bases in at least 80 countries worldwide, and that is only what we're aware of. In recent years, the United States has been the subject of a mass military withdrawal from regions in the Middle East. The closure of 100 bases throughout Iraq and Afghanistan has indeed been polarizing, but the greater surprise might come from the fact that despite these closures, the United States still boasts the largest military presence globally. With close to 750 known operational bases worldwide, the United States occupies 85% of the world's overseas bases. They beat out superpowers like the United Kingdom, Russia, and China by a staggering margin. But doesn't every nation have foreign bases? Well, no. Only 11 other nations have foreign bases, with their collective number at 70. Allies like Japan, South Korea, Kenya, and Ireland host the US military. Some nations like Germany boast 119 US sites, while others have smaller posts or supply facilities. But these bases are not for show. They're part of a vast military network that ensures the United States stays a top influencer of foreign policy, as well as a planned-out union between friendly states, and in some cases, a backup plan for the governments hosting them. The long history of foreign bases began with World War II. The tense times aligned with the key expansionist ideas from presidents like Theodore Roosevelt, who famously stated that America should speak softly and carry a big stick. Franklin D. Roosevelt and Harry Truman put the vision into action when World War II led to the US aiding allied nations like Great Britain, building bases along the way. Great Britain and the US also brokered a deal that handed over significant air and naval bases in British colonies, making the US presence in Europe even greater. The same deal was struck with Denmark's colonies, namely Greenland and Ireland. After the Second World War, the US took over key bases in former enemy countries like Japan and Germany, which is why they have the highest US and military personnel presence today, cementing the ideology of America as the world's guard dog. The United States has a military presence in every continent, which is why they have the highest defense budgets on Earth. It costs $10,000 to $40,000 per year to maintain one soldier overseas, and annual costs of over $100 billion have been recorded in support of personnel management and base maintenance. While this might be a tax burden to some, it's still seen as a vital part of US leadership. US military activity is divided into global regions known as commands. There's the Africa Command, the Northern Command, the Southern Command, Central Command, European Command, and Indo-Pacific Command. These regions connect the US global effort, and the impact is felt in each. For example, when the US set up a base in Djibouti, they chose the most peaceful center of an unstable region. The small nation of Djibouti is one of large importance, being located next to Somalia, which has been a concern for the US since the 90s, as well as being the access point to the Red Sea, being part of the Horn of Africa. Hence, the United States Camp Lemania. This camp is recorded as the only permanent US military base on African soil. But when you take these other locations into account, it's hard to believe. It is rumored that there are over 30 military bases or service locations throughout the continent, and there's probably even more. The same coordination exists in allied command areas such as Europe through the Ramstein Air Base. The German state of Rhineland-Palatinate hosts the largest cluster of bases in Europe. Though the US is a peaceful ally of Germany, this airbase and many others like it serve multiple nations in employing military power over large spaces. Ramstein was key in the US war with Iraq and Afghanistan. The shorter distance of communications for drone strikes made Ramstein vital because it allows orders and coordinates from the homeland to reach conflict areas with satellites in Ramstein picking up the distance slack. The alternative would have been communication from the United States, which would have taken significantly longer and in some cases would have been impossible, compromising accuracy. Ramstein also acted as a resting point and airline for traveling cargo and personnel on their way to Iraq and Afghanistan, lessening the burden on commercial air flights. Large bases like Ramstein also serve as a reminder of home for traveling military personnel, who might have spent years in foreign territory. When entering a US overseas base, you can almost mistake it for the real deal. Restaurants specific to America like Chick-fil-A, Chili's, and Arby's offer the same quality of food for the same price as the homeland versions. There are even US university campus branches from prestigious schools, and some even have shopping malls that screen American movies. Despite the homegrown comforts and collaborations these bases provide, when you look at the pattern of these overseas bases, one thing becomes clear. The US has its largest active military concentrations around regions that it sees as a threat, hence the cluster of bases in Asia to monitor China, North Korea, and the Middle East, and those in Europe to evaluate Russia. But conflict isn't always the name of the game. Some bases serve under global learning agendas. Take the ones in Australia and Antarctica. Neither of these continents is of any threat to the US. In fact, their location only advances scientific research that aids humanity. Military bases in Antarctica do not engage in any weapons testing or combat roles. They are there to serve as protection for the many scientists researching the neutral area. The same goes for the US bases in Australia. The US and Australia liaise with one another often, using the closeness of the continents to transport research materials and scientists to each base and back. South America has a significant base presence, with concentrated efforts in Belize, Guatemala, and Puerto Rico, with the latter used as a headquarters hosting the Army, Navy, and Special Forces. Though US relations with Latin America are constantly changing, the military personnel here serves as a reminder of the closeness the continents share. The Colombian base gives the US insights into any drug-related activity. The gathering of the bases near Nicaragua allows for the military intervention during the ongoing war on drugs. The US gains the same drug intel through air surveillance. This helps different bases coordinate in monitoring the movements of those involved in the Andean drug war. These bases also act as ground zero for various weapons testing programs, which has led to serious scrutiny from environmentalists and residents. After all, a presence like this does not go without any controversy. Some experts state that such a display might lead to bullying and overlord behavior from the more powerful nation. For example, the presence of a military base in a politically unstable nation such as Haiti allows a certain level of influence in the nation's foreign policy, weakening their independence. In cities like Okinawa in Japan, disagreements over the behavior of base occupants has led to massive protests for the removal of America's 120 bases and 53,000 troops. The same sentiments are echoed in South Korea, which hosts 73 bases and 26,000 troops. Some locals are against the proposed bill that would see South Koreans paying more for the upkeep of these bases. The environmental impacts of such bases is felt in Japan, Puerto Rico, Vietnam, and Korea, where locals have complained about the massive garbage and toxic waste that these bases generate. Camp Humphreys holds close to 45,000 people, and its ever-expanding size rivals that of Central Washington. Expensive military deployments for both the host nation and the US in Germany, Japan, South Korea, and Italy match up with the general public dislike of US military presence in the host countries. Other nations argue that such a dense presence leads to the Americanization of locals, which only helps the US expand its influence on a social and cultural level. If the US military is willing to back a coup or takeover of any nation due to political interest, the base is right there to help, undermining the nation's sovereignty. Despite all of this, US lawmakers continually vote in favor of keeping as many bases open as possible. These lawmakers seem to have a good amount of public support, whether the public knows the policies they're supporting or not. Some US citizens see the presence of the bases as a draining burden on taxes that could be allocated better, while other sides see the global presence as a symbol of democracy. There are many sides to this coin, and like many foreign policy topics, no black and white answer applies. Some bases are a major source of employment and infrastructure development, while others only cripple the nation that's hosting them. In the face of all of this, any affected person must weigh for themselves if the cost is worth the perceived benefits. But the question I leave with you today is, how many military bases do you think the United States truly has?